South Africa won't be pushed around. That's according to the country's foreign affairs minister after the U.S. Secretary of State tries to convince Pretoria to sever ties with Russia and China. Instead, South Africa's top diplomat raises concerns that those who are using the country's natural resources are destabilizing the region.
This fear that we exist under some push is, I think, a totally really unfounded belief in the relationship that we have with either country. There's also a concern about countries that have mineral interests in African countries and are there as a destabilizing force. So I think we need to look at the full plethora of problems that give rise to insecurity, bad governance, and the absence of democracy on the African continent. It's not a one-country problem.
That's as Antony Blinken travels through Pretoria with a speech on new policies for African countries, while Washington seeks to contain Russian and Chinese influence in the region. During the trip, Blinken blamed the food crisis in Africa on the war in Ukraine and called for a stronger partnership with the continent to deal with it.
We've seen the repercussions of Russia's war in Ukraine, which are felt across the planet, and especially across Africa in rising food and energy prices. What we seek most of all is a true partnership between the United States and Africa. We don't want an imbalanced or transactional relationship. And our commitment to a stronger partnership with Africa is not about trying to outdo anyone else.
The strategy for Biden, immediately as he started his term, it was to win South Africa and Africa from China. So United States wants to be the first trading partner of Africa. And Russia and China need to work hard to protect such a relationship.
Coinciding with the visit, the White House releases a document detailing its new strategy towards sub-Saharan regions. The plan promotes U.S. involvement in African nations' policies, including issues such as pandemics, climate change, and food insecurity. And while Blinken says the U.S. won't tell Africa how to behave, it also shows Washington's not happy with the continent's ties with Russia and China.
The People's Republic of China, by contrast, sees the region as an important arena to challenge the rules-based international order and weaken U.S. relations with African peoples and governments. Russia views the region as a permissive environment for parastatals and private military companies, often fomenting instability for strategic and financial benefit.
U.S. accusations, however, don't prevent deepening ties, as China is now South Africa's biggest trading partner. Moscow's trade with the country is also on the rise, with monthly exports from Russia this January growing more than 4 times compared to January of last year. And while the U.S. is still trying to convince the region that Russia and China are the root of all troubles, the African public seems to find more faith in ties with BRICS countries than the West.
I think more African countries are encouraged to be part of the BRICS. You can see the development here in South Africa. I'm sure it's also spin-offs from joining that club.
You have such developed countries now, like your China, your Russia, which can greatly assist other countries in terms of having to achieve the same level of infrastructure, economy that they are in at this point in time.
America has been playing with us for a long time. It's now time for BRICS to grow.
In its new strategy, Washington also cites a long and proud history of supporting Africa. However, Joe Altman, host of the Conservative Daily podcast, says it's the U.S. who holds responsibility for destabilizing the continent.
I don't think that the U.S. has ever respected the sovereignty of other nations. And when they talk about destabilization, they can look no further than themselves. And the sad part about what the U.S. says is it's just a bunch of rhetoric. And look, I'm an American. And I'm proud to be an American, but the apparatus within the U.S. government has long been a destabilizing force and almost putting Africa in a place where they can't grow, they can't excel at the same rate that other countries across the world. are growing, and that has a lot more to do with their natural resources and how they can get access to those resources. So no, I don't believe they respect the sovereignty of any decisions that they make, and I'm actually fearful that it's going to become a tug of war, and the people of those African nations, 54 nations, are the ones that are going to suffer. And the African nations, especially South Africa, does not trust the United States. Many nations don't trust the United States. I don't think anything the United States does right now will be seen as anything other than grandstanding and making empty promises that they will, near into the future, not be able to deliver on.